For starters, so what I'm talking about today is an extension to mail activities. For those who are not entirely firm with mail activities, that's what's going on here. In standard Odoo, you can schedule activities, and the idea about the whole thing is that activities can be chained. So you define activity types, and you would say this activity has another activity as a follow-up, and that way you can create huge chains of workflows that fit exactly what your organization does. That's up to now just total standard Odoo. What I'm now talking about is the change that we create some default description that is also standard Odoo, but what I added is that if you have some specific things that I will talk about later, we can make it that you cannot really change things that are not supposed to be changed. So here I am supposed to only fill in some values here. I just made that up. So maybe at a certain point, we want to know how the talks went. And then I just made this form to fill in some numbers for that. But I will not be able to save this now because I also changed those two lines that I'm not supposed to. So it says you should not change the content of this activity as of the form fields. So I do this again. And this time I play by the rules and only fill in things that I'm supposed to fill in. So, and didn't come. So now I was allowed to save. And the nice part is that those two I didn't fill in. Those are calculated. And this is now what I will be talking about mostly. This now is a very useless example, but the customer that I made this for example, they translated most of their Excel sheets that they need for pre-calculations into those activities. So this way they can do, well, first we need to calculate the measurements of the kitchen. And when the kitchen is done and we have filled in some things, then we go to the next measurement. And the nice part is that given all of this is defined within this text field of the activity, everybody can do that. So this is much faster than really changing the data model. You can simply slip in new fields in there and it will work. So how does it work? I simply made up a few extra attributes that Odoo is then going to interpret. And I think this pretty much speaks for itself. So if you give some node an ID, you can refer to it. And the most important part is the editable part. If you set that on some node, then this node is editable and no other node. So this is how we can decide here that adding something here is wrong, but adding it here is correct. Okay, and you can also define types. Up to now, I only support int, float, and string. The idea also is to keep that very simple, so probably it will stay like that. And now the interesting part is that we can also have an attribute to compute some fields. Here I refer to the IDs I defined before. And when you give a computed node an ID, you can also refer to it in other computed nodes. Zoom just told me now that people can see my screen, but I assume you have seen my screen the whole time, did you? Otherwise, it was not very interesting what I told.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Weird, I just got a pop-up now. People can see your screen. Okay.
No, we could.
Well, so that's basically the whole story. You can do very complex things with that because the nice part is, so I'm now changing the template and well, it is up to now a shortcoming of this whole thing that you have to run it through the HTML code to set those attributes. My current customer is not interested in adding UI for that, because all the people who are busy with that are also comfortable with editing HTML. But yeah, it should be quite possible to simply make it so that if you are on some node, you have a button here where you can say, this one has an ID, this is computed, this is editable. That should not be so difficult. I did abstain from implementing this up to now because the HTML editor in Odoo changes with every version. This is now made for Odoo 13. The Odoo 15 HTML editor is totally reduced. I'm not sure if people actually want to use it like that. So yeah, I just stashed that for the time being because the mechanism is more important anyways. So what did I want to show? Oh yeah, let's add some line and compute more stuff. And then I can also show you something else. So you see that this now is the way it is. But we will get problems, of course, when we change the template and then try to save our old things, because then it's different than the template. But thankfully, this is thought of. And I want to show you here that you can also use the object itself in an expression. Just by saying object dot, and then, yeah, let's just say some field, doesn't really matter. The project ID and the name, and that, and then it will simply replace the text of this node with the result of that on save of the activity itself, not of the activity type. So if I save this, so we have a new line. Then I go to edit this, and yay, magic, the new line was already added. So what it does internally, we are going through the code in a second. It simply takes the old HTML, extracts the values there, and then gets the HTML from the template again and fills in the values it extracted from the old HTML. So this way you basically migrate your HTML every time you edit it, if it is one of those that contain the attributes. So, and now it does not work the way it should. Those now should also be computed, and I don't really get why they didn't. This is a total shame. Well, oh yeah, I didn't change the whole thing, so that's actually I think a little bit of a bug. So the read changed the data, but from the point of view of the widget, nothing changed. So I need to actually change something, and then it will do a write, and on the write the computations happen. Yeah. So here you see this is now just stupid text in there. It will not change if I change the title of the project. But the next time I do some addition here, it will update because it does a new computation. So this way you can also keep some data together as it was at the time of writing this activity. This way you can also keep track of some things that change within your Odoo objects. So for example, in the real application where my customer does some pre-calculations, we would also pull some values of the sale order into the activity. And this way we can record at that time when the pre-calculation was done, we had, well, I don't know, the total price at a certain point. Then we added another activity, did a different pre-calculation, then the price was different. Something like that. Okay, code, the interesting part. So all of this, the very important part, because all of this is quite security related, of course, given that you can run expressions, we really need to take care that only people who define mail activity types are allowed to insert expressions. Otherwise, an unprivileged user could use this to not really change things, but to read stuff they are not supposed to read. So yeah, it's important that we go through our two HTML trees and simply assert that nothing is different. And if it is different, it needs to be with an editable attribute. That's not completely correct up to now, because, for example, it will consider two HTML trees different if you have classes in a different order because of this. So this line should be smarter and look at the attribute itself. If it's class, for example, then the set needs to be the same. If it's a style, then it also needs to be verbatim the same, but the same style. That's a little bit tricky to program. That's why I left it out, because we don't need it at the moment. You do all your stuff via the editor, so the editor writes it always in the same way. But if we find out, for example, that the editor reorders attributes, style attributes, then that might be a problem. Okay, so that's one interesting code thing, and the other interesting code thing. At the very beginning, when I got this task, I just told my customer install Auto Studio and be done with it, and then people just add whatever fields they need. But that did not work out because, first of all, the free software issues with the code edit Auto Studio, but also it's too powerful. You simply can do much more than our customer wanted to have. It's they basically wanted a stupid Excel, and that's what you can do with that. With the not such a good user experience at the moment because of the HTML source code editing. But as soon as this is fixed, that might be a potential Excel killer. I want to show you this class because this takes care of the security of expressions. And in the end, what it does is that it takes care that you can look at fields of some record set, but you cannot call functions on it. So this way, this and combined with safe eval, in my opinion, should take care that you cannot do anything with those expressions you could not do with just a read via XML RPC. So I consider this safe, but if you find problems, please PR, at least the test and possibly also the solution. That's basically it. Other questions, comments, etc.?
Thank you. No, I haven't seen a question yet. Someone wants to ask something. Put on the chat.
I don't see or hear anything.
There is one question. Did you think about using models for the poll part instead of HTML?
For which part?
Poll, P-O-L-L. I mean the.
Well, I actually experimented with quite a bit of things. My first approach was simply have a mail activity type link to a survey that you define, and then in the survey you define whatever you want. But there the problem was that it was not really natural to include expressions in there. And the expressions are for my customer a very crucial part, so that so they do not have sums there. They have those huge formulas that people nowadays usually have in their. I don't know what kind of organizations you work for, but I often encounter it that people have their own custom Excel sheets that calculate stuff for them. So they really need the expressions, and I didn't really manage to add that to the survey module in a straightforward way. So that was one Odoo model I looked at. I also considered creating models on the fly, but it's actually not really necessary because as soon as you have it in your HTML, I can show you the function that does the extraction. You would simply call that on a mail activity, and then you have a dictionary of the data that's in there. I do have a plan to also add a function that you can use in expressions too, where you can simply refer to the values of some specific activity type. So this way you could do something like task.last activity values in brackets XML ID of the type, and then you have a dictionary. And this then you can also easily sync into a database. But the whole point of that is not to touch the database. Because so what my customer does there changes very often, which is one of the other reasons why we did not really want to have real models backing that. So that's like somebody fiddling with their Excel table. They do not want to go through meetings with technical people for that. They do not want to have anybody approve it. They simply want to have it. So I did consider it, but decided against it.
Okay. Another question: what advantage has for it to do it in Python and not in raw.js?
Well, it's much simpler in Python to access the Odoo objects themselves. So for the expression part, it would actually be somewhat hardish to do that on the client side. But possible, of course. I simply didn't do it. Is there another advantage? Well, no, not really. Save for the fact that it's much, much simpler to do in Python.
Thank you. Another one. Editing can be done only via HTML code straight, right? If yes, any plan to have non-techie UI?
Can you repeat, please?
The editing part is via HTML code. When you
I put into the roadmap of the PR to add a lot of things. Where is it? So yes, there is the wish, but I do not have any current plans to do it next week because I simply don't have anybody who really wants it. I'm actually not really sure if I were to implement the UI part for that, if I would use this HTML editor. I was also thinking about that it should be easier to plug this into the website HTML editor that also the mass mailing uses, the mass mailing editor uses. Because simply this code is a little bit easier to modify, and the advantage of this is that also did not change that drastically in the next Odoo versions. So maybe it's more stable to do it there. But yeah, from my side currently, no. but it's certainly on the agenda that somebody should do it sometime. We have 2.5 minutes left.
There is one more on the chat. So you plan to do some depends for this function and update. How do you think would it work? Happy depends and some trigger. Will it not be against historic consistency if you update a task activity?
There is no depends in there. It's really stupid. The only thing it does with an expression is compute it when before the HTML is saved. That's the whole story. So it will always an expression node will always contain the result as it was of the time of saving. And this is actually how we want it, because the whole idea of this is that it's fixed.
Okay, I'll check if there is also questions on YouTube. No, it's okay. Okay.
Well, I see in the chat another formulation of why do it in Python and not in JavaScript. Maybe that's the same question, maybe it's a different one. Another thing, of course, if it is about validation and things, is you always have to do it in the backend because on the client side you cannot validate because everybody can change whatever they want on the client side. So even if you do validations in JavaScript, you will have to do it again on the server side because you simply cannot trust whatever happens on the client side.
Yes. Okay, then. Seems no more question.
Well, we are perfectly in time then.
Yeah.
I was supposed to talk half an hour, or to have this talk for half an hour. Well then, I would go back to doing other OCA stuff, and you have fun with that. If you want, please review. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, what project on GitHub is it? Can you show it?
Oh, it's in social and the pull request there, but I also put the address of the pull request in the talk agenda item, I think. Yes.
Okay.
So you can simply go there from the agenda.
Thank you.
I thank you. Have a great day.
Yeah.